I thought silence was empty, until I learned it's where decisions echo the longest. My name is Marin Quill. 11 years ago, I declined a patent so my partner could publish, so the idea could be read instead of owned. Her name is Sable Hart. Last winter, the open standard she carried through 1,000 closed doors became the quiet backbone behind every hearing aid on the market. But the night I signed away the patent, it didn't feel noble. It sounded like a tuning fork in my pocket. One thin note I wasn't sure I could hold. I grew up in a house where the TV captions were always on and the kettle whistled for my grandmother because her hearing aids whistled back. On my desk at the university lab sat a brass tuning fork, A440, with a shallow nick on one prong where I'd dropped it in undergrad. Next to it, a coffee-stained lab notebook with a paper tab that read, "Let people hear people." That tab was Sable's handwriting. Our project was simple the way bridges are simple. You look at two sides and invent a way across. We called it OpenWave, a low-power, low-latency, open protocol to let hearing aids talk to everything else. Phones, classroom mics, theater loops, kitchen timers, subway alerts. Without the private handshakes that kept poor people out or late people behind. We were good together because we were opposites. I was careful to the point of control. The child of a mother who counted pennies and a father who counted decibels. Sable was reckless to the point of holy. The child of a choir director who taught her that harmony is just disagreement handled gently. A company offered to back us, on one condition. Patent first, publish later. Protect the moat, they said. Or someone bigger will drink your river, they said. That morning, my supervisor slid a provisional patent form across the bench. My name on line 1, Sable's on line 2. Sign here, date here, we'll embargo the preprint. Sable stared at the paper the way she stares at oscilloscopes. Like truth has a pulse if you're quiet enough to hear it. She didn't argue. She said, if we patent, we prosper. If we publish, they hear. I wish I could tell you I knew immediately. I didn't. My flaw, scarcity fear, sat in my throat like a stone. Patents meant stability. Stability meant I could fix my mother's roof. It meant my grandmother could try the good hearing aids before the model year changed and the price doubled. But the tuning fork in my pocket kept humming the same soft note. A fork only sings when you choose to strike it. I took the form to the atrium. I dialed my mother. She said, I want your roof safe, but I want your name to be an open door. I hung up. I pressed the tuning fork to the table and let its invisible sound travel into wood. Then I walked back into the lab, crossed out my name on the patent initiator line, and wrote, declined, publishing instead. My hand shook. Sable's didn't. She reached for the lab notebook, smoothed the coffee stain, and said, we'll go hungry a bit. Then we'll feed more than ourselves. We uploaded the preprint. We pushed the code. We mailed cheap dev boards to any teacher who asked nicely and wore out our shoes at community centers, explaining why OpenBeat's locked when the person who needs the signal can't afford to wait. The company withdrew. My supervisor said I'd regret it. I nodded, already grieving the version of me who liked guarantees. That night, Sable taped my tuning fork inside the notebook's back cover with a strip of blue painter's tape. For when we forget the note, she said. Publishing didn't turn us into saints. It turned us into plumbers. We fixed leaks. We sat on library floors with seniors, pairing dev boards to old aids until the room sounded like rain that finally learned to fall where it's needed. We begged standards bodies for 5 minutes at the end of meetings and got 1 minute instead. We lost sleep over battery budgets, gained it back by shaving 7 milliseconds off latency at 3 a.m., with the kind of joy only nerds and new parents know. Manufacturers smiled, nodded, and said, not invented here. A consultant told us, openness is naive. Interop is brand dilution. Sable told him, interoperability is dignity you can hear. He didn't write that down. We learned the choreography of failure. Version 0.3 snapped in crowded Wi-Fi. Version 0.6 died when someone microwaved fish sticks. Version 0.9 worked everywhere except the subway because metal eats miracles. While we wrestled physics, people waited. A teacher emailed that her student, Cam, couldn't keep up with the film unit because the closed caption device for the classroom loop only spoke vendor X, while his aides spoke vendor Y. We shipped a hack. Sable drove it across town at midnight and taught Cam to tap twice on the desk to resync the stream when it drifted. A week later, his mother mailed us a strip of construction paper where Cam had drawn a little ear with lightning bolts and wrote, it worked. Sable tucked that strip in the notebook like a sacred relic. My private fight wasn't with the industry. It was with envy. As the project became Sable's standard in news blurbs, I caught myself counting mentions like money. Sable noticed and did the kind thing. She handed me a bag of copper screws from a teardown and said, "Pick one. Keep it. When you feel poor, remember? Some riches are tiny and threaded and forever yours." I kept a single copper screw in my pocket. When anger grew teeth, I rolled that screw between finger and thumb until the sharpness dulled. There were helpers. Omar, a hearing aid firmware engineer who snuck us a test bench on weekends. Priya, an audiologist who let us shadow fittings and taught us the difference between loud and understandable. Marta, a union stage manager who bullied 3 theaters into piloting OpenWave for caption cues and emergency tones. And there were adversaries. A private coalition tried to rebrand our spec with a toll booth. A university lawyer warned us about implied promises. We responded with documentation a teenager could read and a license that said, in plain words, "Use this freely. Don't close the door behind you." We failed, loudly, then quietly, then cleverly. We learned to test in rooms that smelled like coffee and old carpet, not just anechoic chambers. We put color bands on our dev boards. Yellow for old aids, green for mixed brands, blue for public spaces. Because human brains choose colors faster than version numbers. We added a tactile ping, a tiny vibration on a phone or remote, so a person could feel the connection even when the room was chaotic. 5 years in, a standards committee finally created a seat with our names on it. We printed our badges on cheap lanyards with cracked clips and sat in the back. The chair mispronounced OpenWave. We didn't correct him. We showed him dance floor tests from a deaf prom where the DJ's lights cued a clean handoff between room speakers and personal aids without the usual howl. The chair asked, "You did this without patents?" Sable said, "We did it with people." 7 years in, 2 manufacturers adopted the spec for secondary modes. Not headlines. But Cam sent us a video from the school play where he said his first line on time, not 3 beats late. I pressed the tuning fork to the notebook and felt the wood sing. Then everything went sideways. A big vendor announced their own open-ish standard with a compatibility layer that would bridge to OpenWave if we rewrote our license to allow closed forks. They offered salaries that would have paid my mother's roof twice. I wanted to say yes. Scarcity is patient. It waits years to ask the same question. We said no. They shipped anyway. Their bridge stuttered. Ours held. People noticed slowly. Emergency management groups started asking for guarantees that alerts would reach every ear, not just those with brand budgets. We had the receipts. 9 years in, 3 standards bodies voted to bake OpenWave into the base layer. Not ours anymore. Everyone's. A river finally called a river. The small knot came wrapped as a logistics error. At the International Hearing Expo, I arrived to find my speaker badge for next week's schedule. Wrong day, wrong hall, right yearning. A volunteer pointed me to the overflow room. I sat with parents and teachers and 2 grandmothers wearing shell pink aids. On stage, a slide read, "Universal mode, OpenWave inside." Below it, logos. Brands that don't share anything except liability. Stacked together like unlikely neighbors at a block party. I texted Sable. They spelled it right. No reply. Then a hand on my shoulder. I turned. Sable stood there, hair pulled back with a paperclip. Lanyard cracked at the clip like mine. She had a new tuning fork in her pocket. I could see the outline. We didn't hug. We stood through 1 minute of the keynote with our heads tilted like we were trying to hear the same distant thing. The presenter said, "We won't demo a feature. We'll demo a moment." Lights dimmed. A theater scene began on stage. Actors spoke. Caption cues rolled clean to every phone, then to every aid. The grandmothers in my row both reached for their purse radios out of habit, then didn't need them. A toddler 3 seats over laughed at the right time, not after the room did. In the dark, a soft chime went out across the hall. Emergency test. Every aide switched modes in tune. No applause yet. Just breathing, in sync. The presenter said quietly, "Open means we don't make you rich. It means we don't leave you behind." The crowd finally clapped. Not like fans, like neighbors. After, in the lobby, a woman touched my sleeve. "Are you Marin?" she asked. She introduced herself as Cam's mother. Cam stood beside her, taller than me now, wearing in-ear monitors with a little blue band. OpenWave default. He said, "I hear on time." He lifted a strip of construction paper from his wallet, the one with the ear and lightning bolts. Laminated now. Edges worn. Sable breathed in, and I could tell she was chasing words. She didn't find any. She didn't need to. The knot tightened once more. The keynote host asked Sable to come on stage for a photo, recognized her instantly, and looked past me. I felt the old envy take a step forward. I reached into my pocket and found the copper screw. I rolled it until its thread reminded me what holds things together. Then I pressed the tuning fork to the wooden handrail of the balcony. The rail hummed, a private note in a public place. Sable heard it. She turned, smiled like a harbor light, and without theater, held the mic out to me. I didn't give a speech. I said into the smallness, "Let people hear people." Sable added, "And don't charge them admission. No sermon, no victory song. Just a room that sounded like itself, and a standard that made sure the room could keep sounding like itself for everyone." Later, we sat outside on the loading dock, legs swinging. Sable handed me the paperclip. I handed her the copper screw. We traded small medals like kids on a playground and watched a line of attendees walk by, each with a different brand, all with the same open note inside. We listened to the quiet until it felt full. Then we let it go.